Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg is being sponsored by OnCue Marketing, Best Buy Benches, OmahaFastFoods.com, Certified Transmission, Omaha Magazine, Monahan Financial, Sholdit, NP Dodge Real Estate, Valpak, Kohl's Pharmacy, Centrus Federal Credit Union, Ideal Water. Welcome to Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, the show that will leave you feeling great about yourself, Omaha's heroes, and Omaha, where we live, work, and play. So park yourself on the bench and have fun. Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, the show that you tune into to learn things about yourself that you can use every day of your life to make it even better than what it is now. We do that by giving you 4 motivational vignettes, introducing you to somebody who's really special here in Omaha, Nebraska, and him or herself has done something very inspiring that you can learn from and you can adopt to your life. And of course, every week we introduce you to a major organization that does some tremendous charitable work. And I'm very pleased that this week we have Joe Ellenberger who is with us, and he has got a fantastic story. I'm not going to tell you about it yet because I want you to wait. You are going to be amazed, and Joe is going to be able to tell you things about his life that you're going to use for yours. But let me first start by telling you about something that is very interesting. Now, let's assume for just a moment that it is the bottom of the 9th inning. Bases are loaded, and the game is tied. And there's 2 outs. And guess who's coming up to bat? Yep, you're up. Now you can actually think along if you follow basketball and you get the buzzer shot, or you follow football and it's down to the very last play. What we're going to talk about is going to work for any one of these scenarios, but we're going to get to baseball. The game depends upon you. You are now being called up. As a matter of fact, you're the pinch hitter. As you walk up to that plate, tell me, what's going through your mind? Are you saying to yourself, the only thing I don't want to do is strike out? The only thing I don't want to do is embarrass myself? Or are you saying to yourself, this is my moment to shine for my team. I'm going to get up to the plate. I'm going to be the one that for my team is going to drive in those runs so we win the game. It's a very interesting question because the spotlight is on you. And guess what? Each and every day of your life, the spotlight is on you. Each and every day of your life, you have to come through in the clutch. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is when you are given that opportunity, what do? Do you walk up there and say, I just don't want to embarrass myself? Or do you want to say, hey, you know what? You picked on the right person. I'm coming through. I'm the one that's going to make it happen. I want you to always visualize that every opportunity that you have to do something for your team, you get up there with a full confidence, and when that happens, guess what? You will perform. You will be the hero for the team. You'll feel good about what you do, and that's what we mean by being a clutch player. Now, another thing I want to talk to you about is home improvement. And even if you're not an individual who does a lot of home improvement, I'm sure each and every one of us has, in fact, used a nail or a hammer. Now, what happens when you take that nail and hammer for the very first time? You go ahead and you take the nail, you put it against the wall, you take the hammer, and boom, you bang it on the head. Now, I have a question for you. When you bang it on the head the very first time, does it go through? I doubt it. How many times do you have to hit that nail in order for it to go through the wood? Probably a lot. And I'm going to guess 5 or 6. And even if it's tougher than that, how many times do you stop? How many times do you put the hammer down and say, I've had enough. This is a very futile effort for me. I've given it everything I possibly can, but that nail is simply not going through that piece of wood, so I quit. I doubt it. Because I bet each and every time that you have the goal in mind to take that hammer and the nail and make sure it goes in, you don't stop until you succeed. But on the other hand, what happens in life? What happens when you have a project to do, and that project requires to do more things more than one time? It takes a lot of effort. It has to be repetitive. More often than not, every time we try and do something, and complete a project, not home improvement, but something in our life, we stop. And it's a shame because we don't get it done when we really should. So each and every time that you have an opportunity to complete a project, but it gets frustrating, it doesn't happen the way you would like it to happen, say to yourself, I'm going to do exactly like I would do with a hammer and nail, and I am just going to continue with this project until it's completed. When you do that, imagine just for a moment how much more you get done in life. Now, by the way, there's another one that we're going to be talking about, but here I need your participation. Now, you're going to think I'm rather strange, and I'm going to ask you to really follow through with this because it's very, very important. It's actually going to help you. Because what I want you to do, and even if there are people with you watching the show, I want everybody to do it. Don't hesitate. What am I talking about? I want you to bark like a dog when I count to 3. Now, again, very important. Even if you're alone, I want you to bark like a dog. Even if you're with other people, I want you to bark like a dog. At the count of 3. Are you ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. All right. What'd you do? What kind of a bark did you give out? Did you give out the bark of a Chihuahua? Did you give out the bark of a poodle? Did you give out a bark of a golden retriever? Did you give out a bark of a German shepherd with a big hur, hur? The one that's aggressive. The one that really thinks of himself by saying, hey, nothing's going to stop me. I'm not an individual who's shy. I am not an individual who's timid. And the exercise works great, even when you are with other people. Because when you act and bark like a German shepherd, guess what? When you're out in the world, that's exactly what's going to happen to you. That's going to be your personality. Now, by the way, I have nothing against Chihuahuas or poodles. Everybody has a right to live the lifestyle that they wish. But on the other hand, just think about it for a moment. Which is the one that's going to get that bone? Which is the one that's going to win that battle? Which is the one that's always going to move further and further in the cycle of life? The individual that barks like a German shepherd, nice and loud with that big growl. Now, let's try this. If you didn't bark before, let's do it together. And if you did bark as a poodle or a Chihuahua, elevate yourself. You know you can do it. Elevate yourself to that German shepherd at the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And that's the way I want you to think about life forever. But you know, there's one more thing that we want to remember, and that is as follows. Intimidation. Many of us feel intimidated. We're going to talk about that in just a few moments, how someone can feel intimidated. But the lesson I want you to remember right now, very important, is this. There is only one person in this world, just one, who can intimidate you. You know who that is? The person that you allow to intimidate you. Whether you meet a CEO, an owner, a president, you see them for the first time, don't let them intimidate you because you've already allowed them to. Remember, if they're seeing you, you're on the same level. So always remember, never, ever let anybody intimidate you because quite frankly, you are the best. You deserve to be there. So, bottom of the ninth, hammer and nails, bark like a dog, and intimidation. Always keep these in mind because these are the lessons for this week. Now, I want to tell you about an organization here in Omaha, Nebraska that does absolutely fantastic work. That organization is the JDRF. The JDRF, as a matter of fact, on Saturday, August 2nd, has a walk to benefit children who suffer from type 1 diabetes. Now, write this down because it's a very important date. Saturday, August 2nd, and it's going to be held at the Lewis and Clark Landing. The festivities and registration starts at 8 a.m., and the walk begins at 9 a.m. As a matter of fact, many of us don't even know this. Today, there are 3 million Americans that have type 1 diabetes. Even more important, 15,000 children have it, and there are approximately 80 per day that are diagnosed. So on Saturday, August 2nd, help the JDRF raise $614,000. Be part of that walk. Be part of the registration and festivities at 8 a.m. and let the walk begin at 9, and you count yourself as one of the individuals who will walk that day and will always help children and adults who suffer, unfortunately, from this disease, JDRF. Be there. I hope to see you. And now I have the great pleasure to introduce you to someone who's really inspirational. I want to introduce you to a UFC fighter, and that is Joe Ellenberger. Joe, welcome to your Omaha High. We certainly appreciate you being here, and I want to get right down to it.
Awesome.
You have just established a career in the UFC, but prior to that, you were in the mixed martial arts. And your story is very, very inspiring. So how long have you been a fighter?
I began fighting in 2005. So
2005.
Years, yep.
And just recently, you were in your first fight for the UFC.
For the UFC.
And prior to that, you were in mixed martial arts, or I think, as you mentioned to me before, that's almost like the minor leagues.
Correct. Yep. The Victory Fighting Championships actually here in Omaha had me for a lot of fights, and it was a lot of fun.
I bet it was. So take me back to the very first fight. The very first fight back in 2005. What was the feeling that you had going into that ring?
I wasn't sure if I could do it.
Okay.
I thought to myself, you know, I wrestled in college. I was a wrestler at heart.
Right.
I didn't know if I was a fighter. I wasn't sure.
Right.
But kind of like you were saying, you know, I got up to the plate, and I had to either swing or I had to lay down. And
right.
So I decided, you know what, let's turn this thing into a battle of will, and I took a swing.
I want to go back to that word for a moment. He said the battle of will. And that's exactly what it takes. We're going to talk a little bit about the mental game and physical game, but I want you to remember that the will is what got him there. So I assume you won that fight.
I did. 30 seconds, it was a knockout.
I'm sorry, how long?
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Wait just a minute. On your very first fight, it was 30 seconds, and you had, that's remarkable.
Yeah, and that's when I knew I was hooked.
Oh, yeah. And after that, you went ahead and won 10 fights, or 9 after that?
Yep.
And then you had your first
defeat.
Yep. How did that feel?
You know, it's a lot of adversity, and it was a 25-minute championship bout. It was very back and forth. I came up on the wrong end of the decision, but I knew I had more work to do, and that wasn't going to stop me. I needed to.
You didn't feel like quitting?
Definitely not.
And you learned lessons from the time that you lost a fight. So then you went on to win how many after that?
So I've won 5 since then.
5 since then, and you have another one coming up, I think, pretty soon, right?
I just fought 2 weeks ago in San Antonio, Texas, and I won a split decision. A lot of people actually thought I did not win.
Yeah.
And like you said, I had to turn that into a battle of wills. The first round, I got knocked down, I got beat up, I was down on the scorecards, and so I sat down, and my brother, who's in my corner, and my other strength conditioning coach in my corner, they just said, "Joe Ellenberger, yes, you can. You can do this. This is what you were born for."
Now, wait a minute. I mean, everybody understands motivation, and sometimes people say, yes, you can. It's a bunch of hogwash. Oh, I've heard that before. But yet, you prove that it works.
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy because when you're in the fire like that, you're forging yourself in the fire. It's no easy task. And so, you know, being able to go in there and then turn it into a battle of will and eke out the decision win like I did, man, it was a lot of adversity, and it was it was great, and it's an awesome thing to overcome and be able to set that as my foundation in the UFC.
That's a great way to take a look at it. So in your profession, which one is more important, the physical game or the mental game? And I don't want you to tell me both, because you got to pick one. Which one is more important?
It is the mental game 100%. It is so much a mental game. From the time you're staring at the guy, from the time you weigh in, from the time you're training. You know, some people are built for it and some people aren't. And that's when you find out, when you lock yourself with another guy in a cage and then put the timer at 15 minutes and say, go.
Wow. So I think what you're saying is that each and every one of us could learn from is you don't always have to be physically adept. It's the mental game. It's the courage. Is that a good word? It's the courage that you build up. And how about the visualization that you're going to be a winner? Is that part of the mental game?
Very much so. We do a lot of visualization. Of course, you dream every night, winning that world title, knocking out somebody, submitting a guy. And so it's crazy that you have so much visualization. And then another thing, you just got to know, not only know but believe that you can do it and that you can win. I had a good friend of mine who has a huge painting on his wall in his living room, and it says, "I can beat any man that God has ever created."
Whoa.
And so to me, that's powerful.
So these mantras also work.
Definitely.
And the mantras also work in life. And that's one of the reasons I bring guests like these on the show, Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, because everything that they do, you and me can learn from. But here's one question, which is really interesting: the stare down. I mean, what is that all about? That in itself has become sometimes even more important than the fight. What kind of a training do you go through, and what does that do, and how much of an impact does that have on the outcome of the fight?
It's amazing because there's so many emotions involved with the weigh-in and the stare down, because you have another guy you've never met before, and your first impression is everything, like anything else.
Right.
And so your first impression, you got to have a tough front. You've got to let him know that you're business, that you're here to win.
Yeah.
And so it is a big factor. It's super intense. It used to kind of be something they didn't do a lot about.
Yeah.
And then the promoters thought, geez,
yeah,
this is intense. This sells fights.
So they when two people are staring at each other, who breaks? I mean, at what point does it break? You know, it's like the old thing with a handshake. When do you stop handshaking? So when do you stop the stare?
Well, I'll say right now that I don't break first.
Okay.
And same with my brother.
Right.
We don't break first.
Right.
And so you could stand there for a little while, and it gets intense. But you win that mental game, like you said, right away.
Yeah.
And you've already have the edge in the fight.
And can you tell when you look in the other person's eyes that you're winning that mental fight, that stare down?
Very much so. I think you look into their soul, and they can see yours.
Jeez.
I mean, if this guy's here and he means business.
Wow.
Yeah, it's intense.
Now I'm going to reverse the question for a moment, and I'm going to ask you the following, because each and every one of us face this in our lives. Let's assume for a moment that you have a fight, but this time we're going to do it different. You have absolutely no idea who your opponent is. You don't know the opponent's background. You don't know the opponent's training. You do not know the opponent's record. You know nothing about them other than the fact that they're still in your weight class. You haven't seen them until they enter the ring. Tell me your feeling as I begin to describe that.
That's a little bit of, there's so much unknown.
Yeah.
And you always know more than you think. And so it's a little bit scary, but
okay.
as a wrestler, you always walked into a tournament and they didn't even seed that thing until you weighed in.
Okay.
And so you didn't have time to look up guys, to worry about what they do. You had to focus on yourself and focus on your own performance. And I think that's really the approach that we can take and everybody can take on their own life.
Right.
Is focus on their own performance, not worry about what everyone's doing around them, and really prolong that.
That's a very profound statement that I actually want to repeat. What was just said is so important. In life, you are going to have opponents. Now, those opponents are either going to be people or events. Something is going to try and take something away from you. And everything that Joe just said right now is so powerful and so impactful in your life. Never let anybody or anything stand in your way. Fight with them, stare them down, gain that mental edge, no matter what physical condition and shape that you're in. And as a matter of fact, what I want you to do is I want you to go back to some obstacles that have been part of your life and say to yourself, if I just would have done what Joe just described, would I have beaten that? And the answer is going to be an unequivocally yes. Now, don't doubt me on that, because I want you to try it. And that is so important. So when you train, and now I'm going to talk about the physical training, how do you train? What do you go through, and how long do you train before a fight?
You usually train about 8 to 12 weeks before the fight, and you really try to mimic fight-like training.
Okay.
You obviously know your opponent. Funny enough, my last fight, I had 6 different opponents get hurt up till the fight. And so I honestly didn't have any idea who I was fighting until a week before the fight, which is funny that you asked that question just a second ago.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yep, but you train and you really try to perfect everything about you.
Right.
You try to focus on your performance.
Right.
You try to mimic the fight-like strategy. You're going to be tired. You're going to be hurting.
Yeah.
You're going to be sore.
Right.
You're going to have this and that going on. Your wife's going to be in the crowd. They're going to be yelling at you. You're going to get booed. You
so
try
all
to
the pressure.
Exactly. You try to mimic everything in training so that there's nothing new in the fight.
And isn't that so interesting? Because each and every one of us has talents. Each and every one of us should really focus on our own performance. And we have to train. You might be in your job for, I'm going to say, 5, 6 years. You think you know it all. And when Joe gets into the ring and when he has a fight, he thinks he knows it all. So does he really have to train? Probably not. Do you have to train? Nah. Do you have to increase your skills? Nah. Of course you do. And that's one of the lessons here. Continue to train, continue to perfect, continue to grow, continue to look at your own performance and ask yourself, am I the best? Any opponent, an event, or a person, I'll take out. Now, you've done some coaching too, right?
Definitely.
And tell me a little bit about who you coach, and then as part of that, how do you coach people to win versus lose?
So I was a graduate assistant wrestling coach at the University of Nebraska at Kearney after I graduated, and then I continue to coach wrestlers and fighters alike nowadays. But I think it's just more about coaching them through the adversity. There's always going to be adversity. You're gonna see it. That's life. You're going to see the adversity. Now it's how do you get through it? How do you overcome that adversity is really what you need to coach them through. Everybody has great skills. Everybody is in shape. Everybody is a human.
Yeah.
We all have the same same DNA.
Right.
But it's now you get the adversity, you're in the fire. Now what are you going to do? You going to back down, or are you going to hit it head on?
Now, you faced a little adversity in your life. Tell us just a little bit about it and how you overcame that adversity and what it is, as much as you feel comfortable in sharing.
Yeah, in 2009, I was diagnosed with a very rare bone marrow disease called PNH. Okay. And to this day, I still have PNH, but I've been fortunate enough to get a drug that helps me, quote, be normal. I don't know how normal I am, but be normal enough to continue to train and fight and pursue my dreams. And so I couldn't be happier. And, you know, there's three things that I really want to focus on when I'm trying to focus on me. And number one, it's light a fire in your heart. Got to have that fire in your heart to continue to persevere. Number two, put your faith in God. Number three, never, ever give up.
Now, it's interesting. Most people say fire in the belly. You say fire in the heart. Explain that to me. That's a good point.
Well, in my mind, everyone has a heart. Everyone knows how to, I guess, go hard. But you got to light that fire in your heart. You've got to have the passion, the drive, the focus, the determination, because it's not easy. I mean, everyone makes mistakes, but you've got to overcome, and it's not easy to do.
Is it easy to teach? I mean, you have it. I know a lot of people that do, but some people don't. So how do you teach people
it's very hard
to get fire in the heart?
Yeah, it's very hard to teach. You get a lot of extremely talented athletes, and sometimes they don't have the passion or the drive or the dedication or the perseverance to push through. And so it's very hard to teach. But like I said, it's not really teaching them more skills. They have those. You got to teach overcoming adversity.
So let's take a look at your career. We talked about visualizations. We talked about dreams. So what is your visualization? How far are you going to go in the UFC?
Well, I guess if you had asked me that 5 years ago, my dream, my goal would be to be the UFC champion of the world, and to win a world title is and was my number one. But now I feel like I got here, I have this platform, and winning a world title would be great, but I'm changing lives right now. And people are looking at me and they're saying, geez, this guy, this average Joe from Omaha, Nebraska is overcoming adversity. Gosh, I have this adversity I can overcome too. And that's one thing that if I can help one or two people, I've done my job.
And of course, the word average Joe is synonymous with your first name, so the whole thing actually falls together.
Makes a lot of sense.
Great play on words. So are you going to continue to fight in the UFC?
I am. I have a 4-fight contract right now, and I've won my first one, and so I have 3 left under my contract. And they're going to call me, we're going to book another one, and we're going to be ready to go.
And you're going to win all 4.
That's the plan.
And then after the 4, what happens if you win all 4? Are you going to continue to fight, or you say, whoop, I'm hanging it up?
I got to test myself against the best guys in the world, and so if I keep winning, I've got to go up the ladder, and I've got to play this thing out. I don't think I would be satisfied as a man, as a father, as a person, if I didn't test myself against the best guys in the world.
Yes, because sometimes people say, do you want to play the best, or do you want to play someone who's weaker? And I think what I'm hearing here is that you absolutely want to play the best. You want to fight against the best. So I'm going to come up with another hypothetical.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, you've got a fight coming up, and all of a sudden that opponent drops out. And then they say, well, wait a minute, we really got to promote this fight. So whoever the UFC champion today is in your weight class, you're going to be fighting them on your second UFC fight. What do you feel about that?
Bring it on. Bring it on. I feel like I am the best in the world, and I just need to prove that to everybody else, I guess.
Yes.
I already know it.
Yes.
And so I would invite a fight with the champ. His name's Anthony Pettis right now. I'd love to fight him right now. Yeah. I think wrestling is his weak spot too, and that happens to be my strong suit. And
excellent.
So I think it would be a very, very intriguing fight.
So let's go ahead and recap what you have learned right now from Joe. Number one, it's all about you. It's all about performance. It's all about competitiveness. It's all about believing. It's all about wanting. It's all about focusing. It's all about training. Now, as you hear that, are you saying to yourself, oh, that's too hard for me? Well, you know what? That's good. I'm glad you have that approach, because now it gives you the opportunity to go back to the beginning of the show. Because now it gives you the opportunity to match the bottom of the ninth inning when you're in the clutch. Remember what he did? He was losing that fight. He got up and he said, no, I can do it. And he did. Did he quit? No, he probably never heard my hammer and nails before. I'm not going to suggest that you are who you are because of these hammer and nail things, but I want you to be who you are because of the hammer and nails. Don't stop. If you fell down or somebody beat you down, get up. And the one thing that is so important was his support system. Because here he was in the corner, he had his support system around him, and they came with him and said, hey, this is terrific, you can do it. And I bet you if I would have had you do the exercise, bark like a dog, I got to ask you, what were you thinking?
I was thinking you got to get strong.
Here you
got to
go.
Bark loud.
There you go. And of course, the other thing that we talked about is intimidation. I hope you've learned something, that this fella is not intimidated by anything, nothing. Anything. Remember that I asked him that question about the opponent? That was a terrific question. So as far as this week's Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, you've learned a lot. The question is, what are you going to do with the knowledge? I have a great idea. Use it. And then come back next week to the next edition of Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, because we're going to have 4 more vignettes. We're going to introduce you to one more PSA from a wonderful organization. And we have got another terrific guest lined up for you for next week. And by the way, between now and next week, if you would like to go ahead and contact me, please do so. You can contact me at my website, and you can contact me also through my email. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to seeing you again on Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg. And I would ask you one more thing. I would ask you to use every piece of information that you learned. I would ask you to tell other people to please tune in every Saturday at 10 o'clock so you can meet more people like Joe. Joe, I want to thank you so much because you have taught me, you have taught the viewers, and you have done terrific work with everything that you've done, and we love you for doing that.
On Cue Marketing, Best Buy Benches, OmahaFastFoods.com, Certified Transmission, Omaha Magazine, Monahan Financial, Sholdit, NP Dodge Real Estate, Valpak, Kohl's Pharmacy, Centrus Federal Credit Union, Ideal Water,